on.
Oh, well, that was fast. Oh, what's happening with Facebook?
Oh, it does this like I think there was a disconnect when I made the streams.
Oh, yeah. If you
So
change things, then it disconnects from the.
yeah, I had to do this for every single one. So we're good. I just need to reset it. I've had to do this for every single one. I apologize for anybody that's on YouTube. Nobody's on right now, but
Just listening to us troubleshoot.
most of the time, like when people are joining us live, they don't start until like 5 minutes in. So
even Rick Beato troubleshoots at the beginning of his videos. He's got an assistant.
I think it's funny because I think every single start of this, like every time I start the stream, I'm always just like, because like I'm waiting for it and I just like am making faces. I'm like, hey, huh? So I need to go back. I wonder if the start of every single one of the streams is just me looking like an idiot. But anyways.
Welcome.
Welcome to our January listening club. I'm really excited about this one. I'm honestly not exactly sure. Like, I don't have a lot of points for discussion on it. I'm just really excited that I got a bunch of people to listen to Thundercat. So just a little bit of housekeeping before we begin. This is our listening club, but we do have 2 other clubs. We have a movie club that is monthly, and this listening club is also monthly. And then we have a quarterly book club. We actually finished out all of our club meetings. This is the final one. So we'll restart all 3 of them coming up on the 1st of February. And for our movie club or our book discussion, both of them were really great discussions. We do keep those videos up. So you can absolutely go back and listen to them at your own leisure. And if you are in our Facebook group, which let me go ahead and our Facebook group, Dragonfly Arts. When you comment on those, I actually get a notification, and then we can have a discussion after the fact on any of the media that we have ever discussed. You can find all of them on the Facebook group in the guides tab. Also, if you're in the Facebook group, you can make suggestions or request to be on these panels. We only let 3 or 4 people be on each of them because that's just a lot easier to manage. But we do have a way that you can participate live. Kind of the same way that you would if you're watching it on the replay. If you comment live, we actually see those in real time and can respond to you and have a discussion, and you can be a part of the discussion that way.
Indeed.
Yeah. And if you like what we're doing and you would like to support us, we also have a Patreon. And the Patreon doesn't just support these clubs and us being doofuses while we talk about media. It also supports everything that Dragonfly Arts does. We do live events. We're kind of a creative co-op. We have weekly meetings, and we're a support group for creatives. We do have things that will be added to the Patreon. So once those, we'll announce those once they're ready. But right now, you can just support us for as little as $2 a month. Have I forgotten anything?
Appreciate you. Nope, I think that was it.
Fantastic. All right. Let me pull up. I usually have one that's just the album cover. There it is. We discussed Thundercat. Have you guys listened to this album before?
No. I think you're muted, Miguel.
Yeah, I think Miguel's muted.
I was asking, you mean before it was part of Music Club or
yeah,
right now?
Yeah. Have you ever heard this album?
I've not heard the album. I've seen a lot of videos on YouTube of Thundercat playing, but they tend to be the more virtuosic stuff and less song-based stuff.
All right. Have any of you listened to Thundercat before this?
Not his solo work, no.
I was surprised that I did recognize a couple songs. I don't know where I heard them before, but I was like, hey, I know that song.
Yeah, I have one of these slides. This is a newer album. It was 2018, maybe. I had all of the information up and then immediately closed out of the tab. 2017. We've talked on previous calls about like when we do older music, it's like the album is an experience in and of itself. Like the album, it is a work. I mean, going back to like older methods of listening things, you couldn't just listen to one song. You had to like either find it or listen to the entire thing. So you have like a lot of really neat concept albums and things that are kind of meant to be listened to as a whole. But now in the days of streaming, there's tons of singles on every single album. And this one has 5. So there are 5 singles from this album, which is a lot compared to a lot of the albums that we listen to. One of the other questions I always ask at the start of these calls is, what was your favorite song? If you remember which one it is.
Yeah. Well, mine today when I listened again was "Show You the Way." So, and part of that is just because for whatever reason I was listening today, I decided I was going to be his A&R man at the record label. By the way, real quick shout out that he's got a vintage vinyl album cover because he's got that little stereo logo thing in the upper left as you look at it. But as his A&R man, I was like saying, dude, where's the single? Because I normally, not knowing his solo stuff before, I would just assume he would have like, some sort of jazz fusion type of solo albums, but he has harmonic and melodic chops. This guy can write songs. He can, hang with, the best songwriters. And so I was thinking as an A&R guy, that's this one of the singles. I don't know if it actually is, but I imagine with Kenny Loggins and Michael McDonald, it probably is. But there was like, it's like almost there, but it's like, so anyway, that was mine. Sorry. That was a really long answer. Sorry. I'll let other people answer now and shut up.
No, please don't. We're having a discussion. The entire point is for you to talk.
Okay. Well, anyway, so that's my favorite.
So I listened to this on YouTube, and it was all in one instead of like separated out into a playlist. So it was really hard to follow along as to what I was listening to when I was listening to it. But I liked Tokyo, and
you still figured it out?
Them changes I already knew, and I do like that song. So that one stands out because I was like, oh, I know this one.
Yeah. I think Them Changes was the first song by Thundercat that I had ever heard.
I don't know where I heard it before, but...
Well, it's an Isley Brothers tune, obviously, because like half the Isley family is credited as writers.
Yeah.
Jeepers, look at that. Everybody. Even guys who were in the band that weren't. So anyway.
Yeah, it has it uses their beat.
Yeah.
So it samples them.
It's the beat from Footsteps in the Dark. Marvin Isley plays the drums on that, and Ernie plays everything, but in that beat, he's playing the bass on that. So it's Ernie Isley on bass and Marvin on drums.
Did you have a favorite song, Tim?
I only had time to listen to it once, and I think I don't really have a favorite yet. The one that jumped out at me because I recognized, where it came from, was Them Changes. When you hear something like that you recognize, that's automatically going to stand out. I like the album as a whole. It's funny you were talking about how with older albums, you have to listen to the thing as a whole. And I find with a lot of, particularly with certain hip hop albums from Mad Lib, Thundercat, that class of artists who are working very firmly with sounds and ideas from 70s soul and R&B and rock and other things. I find that their albums tend to sound of a piece, just like the albums that you're talking about. And this felt very much, I felt in a way that I don't when I hear neo soul from the 80s and 90s. That music always rubbed me the wrong way. It just felt kind of like a bunch of pikers, riffing on, the kind of music that I loved. This feels like, it's, if I didn't know that it was from recently, I'd swear that much of it was recorded in the 70s. It feels like the thing that I heard most throughout the entire album was I heard Earth, Wind, and Fire circa 1972, 1975, before they started moving into pop and disco. That's what the sounds that I heard in this album, and very much Verdine White kind of bass lines. So to get back to your question, them changes because I recognized something instantly, but the whole time I heard a deep 70s R&B kind of sound to this thing.
Miguel and I talked about this actually quite a bit. One, when I was picking the album because we picked it together, or I said that I wanted to, and then we had a whole discussion about it. I don't know. But it's Thundercat's background. He comes from a musical family, and his dad was the drummer for the Temptations and the Supremes and Gladys Knight. And so he would have grown up in that. He was like, I think he was like in jazz band as well, but like that, yeah. So a lot of his influences probably came from everything that he grew up with. And I think his parents were a part of like the music community, starting with like, yeah.
Hey, so I wanted to echo a couple of things Tim said. Again, for whatever reason, I became A&R man this listen. And it struck me as like in the 70s, certain bands would for sure not put hits on their earliest albums so they could establish their credibility as like, we can play, we're a good live act, et cetera, et cetera. Like, for instance, I just learned this about Cheap Trick. Their first album is kind of really obscure, but they had all of their hits that were going to come on subsequent albums were already written. And so they intentionally made their first album kind of obscure so they would have a strong reputation as not just sort of selling out to have hits, right? And this sounded like one of those albums by an artist like that, where clearly he knows his way around a melody. Clearly he can write songs, but he's kind of going edgy, right? And then is going to clean it up later. And the next album is going to have all the big hits that really connect with radio, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously a real 70s vibe. So that's one thing. The other thing is, a couple times, just because of the cheesy drum machine thing, it reminded me a little bit of the Sly Stone Fresh, which is Sly going backwards. He's going away from having big hits, although he had hits on that album. I think he only had one. A lot of that album is kind of like experimental and a little unhinged. Like, this is in a good way, like just sort of like, where did that come from? Holy cats. If you're thinking of it like this is like a Stevie Wonder kind of songwriter, song-driven album, which this is and it isn't both.
It's interesting looking at like the track listing of just like how short a lot of the songs are. They're like ideas. He is a fascinating songwriter to me because I listen to it and I'm like, is he so good at bass that like the lyrics just like are kind of like a secondary fact, or is that just like the case with all lyrics? Because I'm surprised that Beckett's favorite song is Them Changes and not A Fan's Mail, Tron Song Suite 2, which is a song that's all about how great he thinks it would be to be a cat, and most of the
Oh,
lyrics are just meow.
I did think of that song. It is a fun song, but I wouldn't say it's my favorite. But it is fun and funny.
Like his melodies are amazing, and the way that he writes, I think it's very amazing. But like I kept having to like pull up the lyrics, and I keep forgetting like how silly his lyrics can be at times.
Yeah.
I noticed, yeah.
Part of
But
that is. Go ahead, Beck.
Oh,
Sorry.
sorry. Only because I wasn't listening to each track individually, so I couldn't remember which one that was.
But that was definitely one of my A&R guy things of like, let's finish these lyrics. What do you think? Right. And then some of the ideas, it's just kind of throwaway. And it's like, well, let's make this as good as some of these other things. Let's spend more time. You know what I mean? And I don't think he labored over the lyrics, but they are very idiosyncratic. They are very of a thing. I'm assuming it fits his personality, right? But it's like I would have this to me kind of also read as, you know, you're in the 1970s, the record labels have a budget, you just sent 23 demos to your A&R guy and said somewhere in this is an album, and it's like, great, let's get 12 of these or 10 of these really together, tighten them up, tighten up the songwriting, tighten up the structures, tighten up some of the loose lyrics, right? And a lot of it is just like, this is amazing, I'm not sure this should be on an album in the 70s, but this is amazing. Yeah. So that's just me.
Yeah, Tim?
I was just looking at the song lengths, and it's interesting. We have to remember, way before you guys were born, back in even before, yeah, probably before even I was born, song lengths were 2.5 minutes. Pop songs were 2.5 minutes long. You know, we've gotten so accustomed to like 4 to 5 minutes being the standard song, but back in the day on 45s, you know, 3 minutes was about as far as you went. But the other thing I was thinking about looking at the lengths, and it just connects him to Earth, Wind, and Fire again, is they would drop these little interludes in between tracks on their albums. You can find it on all their albums going back to at least the second album and possibly the first. I don't remember that one.
Yeah, that's a huge hip hop thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You know, I hadn't thought about that, but you're right. I have heard that in other hip hop things.
Yeah.
I think is the word for that interstitial. Is that the word I'm thinking of? Anyway,
it's almost, it could be. It's almost like you know what they have on SNL between commercials and the show. They call those bumpers, and these are kind of like bumpers. But I guess interstitial works as well.
yeah.
I did like one of them, and one of the short tunes, which I thought of it as a very short tune, but it's actually, you know, a medium length tune on this was the third track, which I really dug. That was when I really started to hear EWF in his sound.
Is that that one?
That's the instrumental one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when I turned it on, I was listening to Rabbit Ho, and I went to do some dishes, and before I knew it, Rabbit Ho was gone. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah. And see, so my thing with that, again, like looking at a producer is like, I love interstitial, but I want it to be sonically obvious. We're in an interstitial. This is not one of the main, right? And again, you know, if you're doing an album like Dark Side of the Moon, it's all interstitial in a way, but or 50% is interstitial, but it just sort of like was on the listen. It sounded like a demo. It didn't sound like a bumper tracker or interstitial, because it's like, I don't know if this is supposed to be. I like to know where I am, I guess, and that's something I would have looked at in the mixing and the mastering. It's just sort of like, make the interstitial sound like interstitial, so you don't sit there going, this is nothing, what's going on? I don't know. That's just me.
I don't know. His writing always feels like diary entries. Like I imagine like this is just what his diary looks like somehow. And so like some of them are really in depth and like his opinions on things, and some of them are, whoops, I left my wallet at the club.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll
Um,
have to give it another listen, but I think I also really liked Walk On By and Friend
Mhm.
Zone.
Oh, the Kendrick Lamar. Yeah, see that?
Yeah.
Those two tunes, were those both Show You the Way and Walk On By, were those both singles, Rebecca? They have
Yes.
to be because of who's on there.
Yeah, because of who's
Yeah,
on
so
there.
Walk On By was my number 2 choice. I just went to, Michael McDonald because that's closer to home. Anyway.
I just went back and I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you go.
A lot. This reminded me, and I knew I first heard Thundercat on the Kendrick Lamar album, "To Pimp a Butterfly," so I was aware of him from that. But even while I was listening to this, there was something about the way it holds together as an album that reminded me of Damn. And I just went to look at the song list on Damn, and it's a lot of 2-minute, 3-minute songs, at least for the first half. Then they go into 4-minute songs. But a lot of the feel of this album and the tone, the way these guys never yell or scream. They just they sing or state the words, lyrics, and they let that speak for itself. There's never this forcing it down your throat. It's very easy to put this on and have it as background music. Interestingly enough, which you can't
They're
do
trying
with
to draw you in instead of
75% hip hop. Yeah.
blast
When
music drawing you in.
And when you listen or read the lyrics, you can see that they're a lot more thoughtful than what a lot of hip hop, I would again say 50 to 60% of hip hop, what those lyrics are like, particularly those who are working on the rap side of the hip hop genre. And I dig that. I think that's why I like Kendrick. It's why I like Madlib and all those cats who are working kind of the jazz side of the street with hip hop and the 70s soul stuff. Yeah, I definitely love this album. I'm going to spend some more time with it. I wish I had spent more time before we did this tonight. But I like the sound.
One more quick thing about Kendrick Lamar is I was introduced to Kendrick Lamar by Rick Rubin's podcast with him. It's just stunning. And I don't even know how to explain it, but if you like Kendrick Lamar and Rick Rubin both, we were just talking about Rick Rubin last night, were we not?
We were.
That I love that bass. I don't like fancy trying to get my short little fingers around that thing, but that's like, what is it? L5 archtop Russ Montgomery guitar with 6 bass strings on it.
With a lot of bass.
Good
Yeah.
Lord. And the pickup's like, woo.
Yeah,
Anyway,
it's a huge pickup.
But anyway, it's the black thing in the middle, the dark thing. It's 2 pickups. There's a dark thing in the middle. That's not a pickup, if I understand it right. Anyway, but like, he's drawing you in, and it can kind of start to sound a little samey, but that's kind of the trade-off of it sounding like a piece. Is these songs sound related, and he's drawing you in, and that just doesn't happen a lot, except for, as you just mentioned. Now that I think about it. Some of Kendrick Lamar's work.
It's like this weird, beautiful balance. And Kendrick Lamar also kind of has this for me. And we've had this for like a couple of other albums, but like that spot where you kind of zone out while you're listening to it. And it works really, really well in the background while you're like doing other things, and it works really beautifully as background music, but also when you pay attention to it, it's incredibly impressive and complex. And I love things that can live in both of those realms.
That's hard to do. I mean, I mentioned, not to sound like the old guy mentioning Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon, but Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon is kind of like that too. There are some, you like stand up and you got to really pay attention moments. Claire Torrey on The Great Gig in the Sky is one of them where you have to stop washing the dishes. But a lot of that album is kind of chill. And then it allows the listener to choose, am I focusing in? Am I backing away? And it's kind of up to you. And that's really, really interesting and also really rare.
Yeah, I know that both, I think all of us when we did Pink Floyd were like, wait, what was our favorite song? What were we listening to?
What are the names of half of the songs? I have no idea.
When does one song start and the other end? Yeah.
Yeah. But that's cool. That's really hard to do. And they didn't do that in subsequent albums. I mean, the subsequent albums, it was sort of like it didn't draw you in the same way, and you knew each individual song. And anyway, neither here nor there.
I was just thinking from the R&B side of the street, what this kind of arrangement of songs and the kind of, if not flat consistency, relatively level consistency. You hear that on the album that I've always called the greatest album ever recorded in any genre, which is Marvin Gaye's "What's Going On."
Yeah.
Those songs, the main differences is that it's pretty easy to tell one song from the next, but a lot of them have similar chord progressions. They all tend to move at the same tempo, and the album works as a single piece until you get to Inner City Blues, which just blows the whole fucking thing out of the water. But tonally, it sounds very much like you're listening to one song throughout the album.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And of course, his parents heard that, and
Who are you talking about? Marvin Gaye? Marvin Gaye's parents?
No,
Thundercat.
Thundercat's parents. They were knee deep in that. So, yeah.
I like Thundercat a lot because he's also just like a huge nerd and does not care what you think. So, I mean, we read the Rick Rubin book where the entire thing is like, do what you have to do for the art and like, don't worry about other people kind of part of it. And he exudes that.
Having said that, I want somebody like Rick Rubin to produce him, produce him, because I think Rick would say, this is a really good tune that you've kind of not thrown away, but you haven't finished yet. You haven't crafted this to the degree that it is deserving of. And yeah, there's all this other crazy stuff, and Rick's going to be cool with all the crazy stuff. But he would, some of these tunes are just so friggin' crazy. Like, finish it. You were this close. Finish it. You're familiar with it's like Tim, you might know this. Paul Westerberg with The Replacements.
I'm familiar with him. Yeah.
Oh my! He's like the king of that. Just wait. You finish the song. This is great. You didn't finish it. Sorry. But anyway.
Maybe it's just a different kind of songwriting that's evolved from the kind of songwriting that we're accustomed to.
Yeah, it's like I said, I always feel like he's writing diary entries. So like, what would you do to finish the song?
Oh, are you asking me the question? Or
yeah, because you're like, just finish the song. I want to know.
I wouldn't do it with all of them. I would mix/master it so that it was really clear when we were in interstitial land and when we were not. And it's not just audio, it's not just levels. It's just like, hey, we're in an interstitial moment, and just pick 2 or 3 of the songs, or let's just say, for the sake of the argument, the 4 singles, and just work those to death from a song structure and emotional impact point of view. Right? Just not, I say to death, and this is probably not the kind of artist you want to work something to death with, but just like really, really optimize the arrangement, the melody, and just the song. They're like really close, and he's such a great songwriter. He's got such great melodies. It's just like, yeah. Anyway, but that's just me. That's why he didn't have me produce his album, possibly. So he knew I would do that.
I mean, I've only listened to it the one time, and I'm perhaps I missed it, but are there verse and chorus structures on any of these songs?
Yeah.
No,
There
I
are?
disagree. I don't.
They all struck me as through composed works, which a lot of hip hop is, particularly in rap. It's not known for having chorus and verse. If you're lucky enough to even have a different harmonic underpinning to the chorus from the verse to separate the two, what I gathered from the one listen, it seems to me that you're trying to apply a traditional form to music that doesn't. It may be you're right, and maybe it should be that way, but I'm willing to take the artist at his word, and this is how he wants his songs to sound.
Yeah, and I don't say that implying that he needs to do that. It's just like, oh my God, this is great material. And if you argue he doesn't really do verse chorus, he has hooks. There's hooks, so it kind of doesn't matter if it's verse chorus. Let's optimize the hooks. Let's make this something just awesome on the level of somebody like Marvin Gaye's or Stevie Wonder's best work. If you want to just focus on the Motown diaspora.
So do the hooks repeat so that that in a way that says, okay.
Well, I remembered them, so I'm assuming they did. I have a pea brain, so
yeah.
They do kind of. He does a lot of. Sometimes he'll repeat a section, but it will have different words, or sometimes he'll repeat like a line, but it will be in a different spot, but it will have the same riff under it.
Which is really cool and interesting stuff, right?
It just seemed to me that while listening to it, that like it goes back to artist intent, right? Because it feels like he didn't feel the need to tack on anything else than what he was trying to say, and he said it, and that's how he said it. So that's what we get.
Miguel and I have a difference.
Which is awesome. What's that?
Miguel and I have differences in like the kind of music structure we like, because I tend to gravitate to things that are more through composed. And I remember that we had this discussion kind of after James Blake, where he also doesn't do normal song structure and instead builds his songs so that they're closing in on you. And a lot of times he's repeating the exact same thing over and over and over. It just gets closer to you as the song goes on. And you had the same comment of, it doesn't feel structured enough.
Yeah, well, that's just me. But I love the album. I recommend the album. Right? It's just like I don't know if I felt it. I don't remember feeling the same way about James Blake. Just like, this guy can fucking write songs. There's not enough people out there doing this. Let's just get a producer with him that'll just like optimize the song, and then if he decides he doesn't like it, he doesn't have to release it.
He's definitely, he's probably one of the best bass players. Just
who has he played with before? Because I'd never heard of him before.
He played with Kendrick.
Yeah, he played with Kendrick. He also played with Mac Miller a lot. He did a lot of like hip hop stuff.
Is Mac Miller on this one? He's on this one. Maybe not.
I don't know if he is. I don't, honestly, I don't remember when Mac Miller died. He would have died right after this album was released. We should do a Mac Miller album at some point. I like his music a lot. Yeah, he definitely played bass with other people, especially in hip hop. But his style of bass playing is very much at the forefront.
Oh my God, he was in Suicidal Tendencies.
Oh yeah,
that is crazy. Ha!
Yeah, he. I thought he was in that, and so was like his brother. He also apparently was in a boy band for a bit. But I know nothing other than a little line. So I need to do more research on that.
Kamasi Washington
plays the sax solo on them changes.
No, he was on a Kamasi Washington album.
Oh, he was on a, yeah.
2 of them. And Erica Badu helped him. Oh, he's on an Erica Badu album. Anyway. But, hip hop, jazz.
Yeah,
Oh, he did a lot of Mac Miller stuff, Corey. Oh, my God. He did something with Gorillaz.
that was recent. He did something on the Gorillaz' most recent album, Cracker Island.
There you go. Love the Gorillaz. We should do Gorillaz.
We should do Gorillaz.
That came up as a possibility.
I one time, this is getting really off topic, so maybe I'll have to save it for a talk on the Gorillaz, but I have straight up watched like a 2-hour long lore video on the Gorillaz. So I am ready for that conversation.
Oh, he did do an
me.
Erica Badu album.
Yeah.
Send it to me. I want to watch it.
I'll just see if I can find it again. Yeah, I think as a bass players have this interesting quality about them where they often aren't the forefront of the band. So a lot of bass players are like, do work with a lot of other people regularly, and yet they are in control of like the entire sound.
Yeah, unless they're in a dedicated band.
Yeah, so I think this is hilarious. My first semester at music school, you had to be in an ensemble, and they would give you multiple songs, and like it would just be like a series of songs that you had to learn to play and then learn how to work them as a group. So we had a funk bassist and a funk drummer, which is to say that we did funk renditions of every song we were given, and we did it all as a 30-minute long thing, and we all got D's.
But it's just that sounds fascinating.
I think we did a fantastic job. It just wasn't what we were supposed to do. But the moral of the story that I always say is like, no, we had no choice. Both our bassist and our drummer were funk musicians. Yeah. You don't get a choice then.
Those two are the heartbeat of the music. So, yeah.
That's, and speaks to my problem with a lot of bass players, because pop and slap has become associated mostly with funk. So when people hear funk, they automatically associate that with pop and slap, the bass style. And there's so many players, we're listening to one, don't do that, Anthony Jackson, one of the great jazz players, he stipulates that he does not do that. He says there are other players that do it much better than I do, and it's not how I hear the bass. And I feel the same way. I play bass. I do not do that, not because I couldn't do it, just because I don't hear the bass that way. You don't have to play that way to play funk. I very rarely hear Verdine White play pop and slap unless, if he's taking a solo, he may drop something in there, but most of his stuff is playing bass lines that sound like melodies. Pop and slap never sounds like a fucking melody. Maybe Larry Graham gets it to a melody on occasion, but for the most part, it's all egotistical showing off, and I just don't have time for that. That's why I love a lot of these guys in hip hop, their bass playing, because they pretty much shy away from that stuff.
Well, what's interesting, you talked about early Earth, Wind & Fire, this being reminiscent of that, and I'm thinking, he's not that far from Verdine White, because Verdine White was, he was a jazzer, right? Like most, a lot of people were back then, and his lines, like you can't think that stuff up, even though it's very poppy and hooky. You don't think of those Verdine White bass lines if you don't have a jazz background, And I think there's some like influence there now that you mention it, that, like the Verdine White thing, those are real hooky bass lines. But, and then, who his bass player teacher was the guy who was the trombone player in Earth, Wind & Fire's horn section, is the jazz upright bassist. It's like, what? You're like, you did
George Bohannon?
No. Well, the first version of the Earth, Wind & Fire, the Phoenix horns that ended up leaving and going to Phil Collins. Those guys.
Yeah, I don't remember who
there's only one trombone here. It wasn't that name though. Anyway, but I could see that because it's like it's really jazzy, and really hooky at the same time. And that's what
Yeah.
I think of when I think of Verdine.
He is, yeah, no, Thundercat is well crafted and knows what he wants to do.
Yeah.
And has the chops to back it up. But yeah, I think that is what it comes down to, is just, yeah, he knows exactly what he wants that to sound like.
Taste. He has taste. He's a tasty player.
Absolutely. He's a tasty songwriter.
Mhm. When he bothers to complete the song.
Well,
Right.
you know, I've only heard one person with that particular critique. I wouldn't give it too much weight.
I listen to these albums a lot of times. I'll listen to them once, like in like my room casually, and then I'll do it again, like more like with headphones on, more thinking about it. And when I'm in the room, Ryan's usually with me, and I also have like this weird judge point of like, what's his opinion? Because he's not a musician. And he wasn't into music before meeting me, and he's a lot more. He loves this album.
Hmm.
He's liked the entire album and plays it in his car when he drives places.
There you go.
But yeah, I think he has like this kind of it's very appealing. It's very weird in a way.
Definitely.
He's a nerd.
In what way is he a nerd?
He has an entire song on this album about anime.
Oh, really?
Huge
Yeah,
anime fan.
That's how closely I guess I was paying attention to the lyrics.
Yeah,
Also, there's some definite Frank Zappa stuff. Nobody likes Frank Zappa who is not a nerd.
I did notice a lot, like, it's interesting because we've been listening to a lot of like older music, and he incorporates a lot of like very current slang into his songs, and so that was interesting because I was like, wait a second, that's something that kids say. Like, I think there was a song that was like something about like no cap, and there was something that was like, yeah, I was like, what?
He's definitely an interesting cross section of like, he grew up with R&B very clearly, like has a background with that, studied jazz, had probably the same influences that like Beckett and I had in high school. So like played a little bit of punk and stuff, and then got into rap and like electronic music and just went all over the place and brought it all back in.
Yeah, he's an LA boy too.
Yeah, he's from the same neighborhood that Earth, Wind, and Fire moved to when they all moved here from Chicago. I only know that because one of my mentors lived in the same block with them. Earth, Wind, and Fire had a communal house in the early 70s before they hit it big. And they lived down the street from one of my mentors, Ralph. So maybe it's the neighborhood.
Could be.
You know, I'm just checking out the genres under his wiki Thundercat page. And yacht rock is there, and that Michael McDonald, Kenny Loggins thing is a total yacht rock, Steely Dan, Kenny Loggins, Michael McDonald kind of. It has little moments like that. Not the whole thing, but there's just little like, oh, there it is.
I hate that term.
Yeah, it's overly broad. It's sort of like calling Earth, Wind, and Fire a disco. It's like, wait, you can't do that.
I mean, we've talked about genre a lot on these.
Yeah, you know what's interesting about yacht rock is that's like it does. Well, obviously, it came about after record stores ceased to exist, right? But I think it was started as a way to slam that kind of music, right?
Yeah, I can see that.
What's that?
Solid slam.
Ooh, say it again.
I said it's a good solid slam to my ears.
I've never even heard that term before. I don't know what it means.
It's like slick, heavily produced music like Steely Dan and Kenny Loggins and Michael McDonald's era of Doobie Brothers, and there's others, Christopher Cross.
Okay, I need to put this photo up on the screen because this
Uh-oh.
is very funny to me.
I want to look at his bass longer. Okay, go ahead, switch the picture.
Well, it's not on my thing. Is I want to open that in the new tab. I was just going to keep doing that. Okay. I'm trying to figure out like the best way to put this one image up on the screen. Anyways, it's probably not worth the amount of buildup that we've now had for this.
I'm happy to do extended drum roll for you.
You could probably share your screen.
I think what I'm going to do is I took a. Can I? Yeah, I think I have to share my screen. We are going to do.
Da, 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 da.
Hey, while Rebecca's doing that,
Da, 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 da.
Yeah, talk about something else. Talk about something else, quick.
Da, da, da.
All right. Hey, so how is this album compared to his other solo albums? Is it similar, very dissimilar, kind of similar? Those I have not listened to.
How many albums does he have?
I think 4.
I think he has like 4. I've really only listened to Drunk and It Is What It Is, which is the more recent one.
Yeah, there's 3. There's only one before that. Although it's called The Beyond / Where Giants Roam. Is it 2? Oh, it's an EP.
That's an EP.
So that's not an album, is it? It's not an album, is it, Tim? Jeez, dude. Oh, I guess he just has 2 full albums. The Drunk and It Is What It Is. There you go.
Yeah.
But
All
how
right,
does
so I
this
can't
compare
put
to
the
It Is What It Is?
I mean, stylistically, I think that it's pretty similar. Man, it's been such a long time that I'm like,
Ready to give up?
yeah, kind of. I'm a little bit ready to give up. Anyways, go look up the album. Just write "No Curfew Thundercat," and you can come up with the album of just young Thundercat with his boy band. And it's very funny to me.
Is
And
that what you're
totally-
trying to show us?
Yes, I really wanted to talk about it.
What is the name of the band?
No Curfew. It looks like they probably should have like been on a Warped Tour or something. It's just the most 90s thing I think I've seen in a very long time.
Oh, wow. That is a funny cover.
I think it's the sepia tone for me.
I think it's the blue steel faces for me.
Or the one guy in the back, just
Except for him.
anyways,
Thundercat looks like he's 13. He looks
he
really
probably was.
young. Okay.
But this is a man that has existed in the music industry for as long as he's been alive.
There you go.
In the music industry without having the skills that he has. And man, yeah, just from a technical standpoint, he is an amazing bassist. All right. I'm running out of topics, mostly because all I can say is that I really, really like this album. And I kind of picked it because I wanted Tim and Miguel to listen to it.
I'm glad you did.
I thought that they'd like it a lot.
It worked.
Yay!
Yeah, I agree with the sentiment that it's like kind of a good listen for if you're trying to pay attention and like get something from his lyrics, but also a good one just to put on in the background and not really listen to and just have going. So it serves both purposes well.
It's got a very consistent vibe and not massive, what do you call it? Emotional highs and lows or words to that effect.
Hmm.
All right. Does anybody have any final thoughts before we head out for the evening?
Go listen to this album. Go
Valid.
listen to the album with Kendrick Lamar, for that matter.
Yeah, go listen to Thundercat. Go listen to Kendrick Lamar. Go listen to Mac Miller.
Yeah.
They're
I was
all
reading
great.
his wiki page that he was really close to Mac Miller, apparently.
Yeah. They both, like, I think everybody in that group has, like, vibes that are simultaneously very intense and very calming. If that makes any sense. It's like, I think Tim was talking about earlier, like, none of them raise their voice ever. So it's everything talking. So even when they're talking about very serious matters, it's like soothing.
There you go. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think my final thought would just be like this album really embodies the book that we read and discussed on Sunday. Like, you know, it's not out, he didn't put it out in service of like fame or fortune. He really just wanted to do something artistic the way he wanted to do it, and that's what he did.
And it worked out really well. It's highly acclaimed. It's kind of like nothing else that's out there. And it's phenomenal. So
Yeah. It's like a fusion of like 5 different genres in one.
it's everything he's ever been, just expressing as he is now. Anyways, on that note, I think I'm going to call it for the evening just because, like I said, I mostly picked this album because I wanted you guys to listen to it and not because I had talking points. So thank you all for joining me, and I hope to see you on the next one.
Yep. And thank you out there.
Bye.
Bye.